Recording in progress.
We ready? Okay. Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock, and so at this time, I'll call to order the Douglas County Board of County Commissioners joint meeting with the Audit Committee. In attendance, we have the four commissioners. Commissioner Rice is in the process of logging on, so he'll be joining us via Zoom. And also in attendance, we have Chairperson of the Audit Committee, Ms. Rankin. We have member Ms. Schurman. Is that correct? Yes. In the Schurman? And I know we had that problem when we appointed you earlier. And also Mr. McCoy is joining us also. Thank you. And also sitting on the Audit Committee also, I believe, is Commissioner Noasad as one of his assignments. So we have four members of theirs in attendance. I believe there was an earlier resignation a month or so ago that precluded the fifth member. So, but we have those appointments coming up in January, so there's no sense in appointing somebody for an interim period of a couple months. So once again, I call this meeting to order, and I call upon Commissioner Rice to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance if he's on. There he is.
I am on. Thank you, sir. You'd stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting will be run generally in the same manner in which we run normal board meetings. So we'll open with public comment. We'll go to, we have no consent calendar agenda this meeting, so we'll go to the approval of the agenda and immediately into the administrative agenda after we have public comment. And we have two items on the agenda today. On the administrative agenda for presentation only, an item, and then also a possible action item to accept possibly accept the annual CAFR report. So at this time, we'll go into public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker unless additional time is granted by the board chairperson. The Board of Commissioners does use timing lights to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. You will see a green light when you begin, and then a yellow light, which indicates that you have 30 seconds left and should conclude your comments. Once the light turns red, we ask you to please sit down. In addition to opening public comment will also be taken on administrative agenda items that are identified for possible action and closing public comment. If you plan to speak on a specific agenda item that is on the administrative agenda and identified for possible action, we ask you to please wait until then to provide your public comment when that agenda item is heard. So at this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and control of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. In lieu of Commissioner Rice being present in person, Commissioner Ingalls will be running the timing system today. So my seat took a dive. Felt like I was sitting in a bucket. Okay. So public comment. Is there any public comment here in chambers? Okay. Well, let's go to see if we have anybody online, and then we'll come back to us. Yes. So, Ms. Johnson, is there any public comment online?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marsha Johnson for the record. At this time, there's no online attendees.
Okay. Very good. So we'll bring it back to the board. Mr. Ingalls, you had comments?
This will be brief. This is my last meeting. I will be retiring from my government service after this month. But just to bring up some historical information, and some of you were here, when I came on board as a commissioner, there was no accounting department to speak of. They were not doing month-end closing. They were not reconciling bank accounts. I don't know what the heck they were doing. The numbers they weren't good. When we did budget meetings, or when they were doing budget meetings, they were cutting and pasting. Judge Young was told what his numbers were supposed to be, and that's how Tiregate. Were any of you here during Tiregate when that happened? Yeah. Well, that happened because nobody was looking at the numbers, because the numbers can tell you everything. So all of you that have been involved with this, the audit committee, the Moss Adams, the outside auditors, and Terry Willoughby and her crew down there in the accounting department, we've got good numbers today, and it's all because of the efforts that you folks have put forward. So very commendable, and it's made a big difference for this county, because that's the way it should be run. Thank you.
And contrary to your report, Mr. Ingalls, we're still in November, so you have one more month left and two more meetings besides this one. Just, okay. So anyways, any other wishes? Okay, very good. And then we'll go into the, we'll close public comment, and we'll go into the approval of the agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the proposed agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Noah-Sad, seconded by Commissioner Ingalls to approve the proposed agenda. Sensing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We'll go into the administrative agenda. Item number 1 for presentation only, presentation of the Douglas County Internal Audit Program update by Moss Adams, being presented by Ms. Haley Garcia and of Moss Adams, right? And I'm going to turn this floor over then to Ms. Willoughby, our CFO.
Thank you, Terry Willoughby, for the record. Actually, Chelsea Ritchie of Moss Adams is presenting today, and she's on Zoom, and I will turn this over to her. This is their semi-quarterly update of activities.
Thank you, Terry. This is Chelsea Ritchie with Moss Adams for the record. So going over our internal audit status report, this is from August 4th through November of 28th, 2022. Currently, we are finishing up the report for the cash handling follow-up test work. Activities for next period, we'll be presenting it to the audit committee. And I actually can just share my screen so you all can see the memorandum as well. Going to the P-card internal controls testing, that will start in December and then go through March of 2023. The cooperative extension efficiency study, January of 2023 through April of 2023. We will then begin our fiscal year 23-24 internal audit plan. The schedule for that will be from May of 2023 through June of 2023. And then looking at the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline administration. So this is from July of 2022 through November 28th. We've received 2 reports via the website since the last audit committee meeting. One was pertaining to HR and one was fraud. We've reported those both to county management, and one is closed and one is pending at the moment. Is there any questions?
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Ingalls. And by the way, members of the audit committee, I will be giving each of you an opportunity also to ask questions during this process. So we would ask you to state your name for the record, just so, because we don't have name plaques in front of you right now. So Commissioner Ingalls.
Come on. This is Commissioner Ingalls. Just to enlighten everybody and bring us up to date, without creating any problems legally, can you give us a update as to the status of the pending fraud case?
I am going to defer that to Terry.
Terry Wilby, for the record, it's still under investigation, and so we have nothing to report at this time. It's unresolved. And I would, if Zach has anything else to add to that, as to what we can disclose at this point.
Thank you. Zach Wadley, District Attorney's Office. Given the pending nature of the investigation, we generally would not disclose specific information relating to that investigation to not compromise the ongoing investigation. So it is ongoing, and once it's resolved, it'll be fully reported to the audit committee and ultimately the board.
Understood. Can you give the audience some overview of what the case is about?
Terry Willoughby, not at this time, because just because there's a report of fraud doesn't mean it's fraud, and so we don't want to give any indication that might harm somebody.
All right, so it's top secret. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, Commissioner Rice, any questions so far?
None so far, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Tarkanian? Commissioner Nosad? Okay, and I don't either. So I'm going to go down at the end. Mr. McCoy? No? Ms. Schuerman? Okay. Ms. Rankin?
I'll just add that this is Terry Rankin for the record. The fact that you even have a report is amazing. So be grateful for that, and there will be some kind of resolution in the future, because that was one of the issues with Tiregate. You had whistleblowers, you had other activities going on, but it was not being investigated and resolved. So you're light years from where you were. Okay.
May I add to that?
Absolutely. Sure.
Well, it's good to know they're working on it, because one of the problems with Tiregate is it went on for so long that by the time we got it before a grand jury, there was nothing left to investigate. The primary suspect was dead, and all the other things that were involved and stuff had dissolved into the atmosphere. So you have to keep on top of these things, but you've got the financial information now where you can do these things, and that's why it's so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The only thing I will add to that is, and I'm glad that you are investigating that. We had an earlier incident, I believe, early this year, or maybe it was late last year, where we had a indication of fraud within one of our departments, and that was prosecuted. And even though dollars-wise, it wasn't a huge amount of dollars in the grand scheme of things, but at least it was still investigated and brought to trial and adjudicated. So I am proud that our departments are making sure that no matter what the fraud is or proposed fraud or suggested fraud, that we are going to investigate it and prosecute to the full extent of the law possible, regardless of the amount. So that's important, and important for our public to understand and important for us to acknowledge also, I believe. So if there's no further comment regarding this presentation, we can move to item number 2. No other comments? Okay, then very good. We'll move to item number 2. For possible action, review and discussion to accept the Douglas County fiscal year 2021-22 financial audit and annual comprehensive financial report, ACFR. Little change of the acronym, but okay. And this is being presented by Chief Financial Officer Terry Willoughby. Ms. Willoughby.
Terry Willoughby for the record. The first presentation, I'm going to turn it over to David Showalter of Eide Bailey, who are our financial auditors. Moss Adams are our internal auditors. And he will present the audit results, and then I will do a brief presentation giving an overview of the financial condition after that.
Well, good afternoon, members of the committee and members of the board. My name is David Showalter for the record, and thank you for having us this afternoon to discuss the results of the audit for fiscal year 2022. I'm going to share my screen. So again, my name is David Showalter with Eide Bailey, and I am the audit partner on the audit engagement for the County of Douglas. My responsibility is overseeing the audit and the results of the audit and signing the audit opinions. We also had James Ramsey, who was our technical and quality control partner, involved with the audit. David Morris was the audit manager, and Layla Sumari was the senior audit associate. And our audit scope was the June 30th, 2022 financial statements that are prepared by the county. Our responsibility is to audit those financial statements and render an opinion. The financial statements are part of a larger comprehensive annual financial report. We refer to that as the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or ACFR. And we also are responsible for conducting an audit of your federal financial assistance through the 2 CFR 200 single audit. That audit is ongoing and will be completed at a later date. So here's our plan, scope, and timing, just pretty similar to what we presented to you at our interim meeting. We started the audit back in June of 22 and conducted the final phase of the audit in September and October. And we issued the opinions on the 28th of November. And then the single audit fieldwork will commence in December through January, with the hope of issuing that report sometime in that January, February timeframe. So our responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards is to express opinions on whether the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So our audit provides a reasonable but not absolute assurance, and our audit does not relieve management of its responsibilities. Again, the audit opinion outlines the responsibilities between management and the independent auditor. Management is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements, preparing those financial statements, and taking responsibility for those financial statements. Again, our role is to independently audit those financial statements and render an opinion. Our responsibilities also include maintaining professional skepticism throughout the audit, identifying and assessing risks and material misstatements in the financial statements, whether due to error or fraud. We also obtain an understanding of internal controls relevant to the audit, primarily to plan our audit procedures, but not for the purpose of expressing opinions on the effectiveness of the county's internal controls. We also evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies used and the reasonableness of significant accounting estimates made by management. And then we also conclude whether, in our judgment, there are conditions or events considered in the aggregate that raise substantial doubt about the county's ability to continue as a going concern for a reasonable period of time. That last bullet point is somewhat of a item that has always been the case from the perspective of us considering going concern for any of the entities that we audit. Our auditing standards has added this language directly to the audit opinion for this year. So we don't have any issues with going concern, but it is something that we do put in our opinion from the perspective of what our responsibilities are with planning and concluding on the audit. So the summary of our audit results is an unmodified or a clean opinion. So congratulations to the county with that. I know a lot of hard work and effort goes into closing the year end and preparing the financial statements and preparing for us to audit the numbers for year end. So Terry and her team do a great job. We appreciate all their effort with that. We do have an emphasis of matter included in the audit opinion, primarily related to the implementation of GASB 87, which was the lease accounting standard, which was effective this year. And then lastly, our responsibility continues with communicating to you in a separate letter our ethics and independence, qualitative aspects of accounting policies, any difficulties we encountered, any uncorrected or corrected misstatements, disagreements with management, when management signed the representation letter, and consultations with other accountants. So to expand on those a little bit further, we have complied with all relevant ethical requirements regarding independence. As far as significant accounting policies for this year, there was the new accounting pronouncement, GASB 87, which required the county to record leases that were previously reported as operating leases onto the balance sheet as right-to-use assets. And any of those leases that were revenue leases where the county was the lessor. In those cases, we recorded lease receivables with an offset to the deferred inflow of resource category. So that standard was effective starting July 1st, 2021, so at the beginning of the year, and is effective throughout the year. And the ending balances are reflected in the financial statements. Primarily, the airport has a significant number of revenue leases that were recorded. And then there were a few other leases recorded in the government activities classification. Significant estimates with any financial statement that's specifically for a governmental entity. There are going to be areas in the financial statements that are prone to estimation. In the case for the county, those areas that have significant estimates include the net pension liabilities, the OPEB liabilities, as well as the valuation of claims liabilities. So those areas involve the county relying on specialists, actuarial specialists, to provide those estimates. And our responsibility is to review those estimates to ensure that they're reasonable in all material respects. With respect to misstatements, there were no corrected or uncorrected misstatements as a result of the audit. Management did not consult with any other accountants with respect to items related to the financial statement audit. No significant difficulties with the audit. Audit went very well this year, and we had no disagreements with management. The results of our audit did identify a few internal control deficiencies, which we have included in the report. I believe it's toward the end of the report. You'll see an outline of those internal control deficiencies. I'll go through each one at a high level, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Several of them are repeats from the prior year, so there's essentially the same finding as was reported in the prior report, with an update to the status of its corrective action going into fiscal 23. The first one dealing with the review of financial system user roles. Again, that's a repeat finding from 2021. Finding number 2 is related to capital assets. Again, that was a repeat finding. Finding number 3, this particular finding related to the budget is new for this year, and this deals with a compliance requirement that the county is required to submit to the state certain documents in order to document any changes to appropriations. And so those documents are required to be submitted to the state prior to the end of the fiscal year. And so in this particular case, they weren't submitted timely. However, it had no impact on the budget schedules for the financial statements. Finding number 4 was related to budget monitoring. Again, this was a repeat from the prior year. And the reason why they're primarily repeats is the corrective action hadn't quite been implemented by the time we had conducted and completed the audit, and by the time we got to the June 30th, 2022 year end. So we evaluate the findings to determine if they're implemented or not, and look to see what evidence there was of implementation of those control deficiencies. And in some cases, these recommendations are going to take a little bit longer and span into the fiscal 23. So, and then the last two were number 5 and number 6. Again, these were repeat from prior year, dealing with segregation of duties on one for town of Gardnerville, and then accounts payable documentation for town of Gardnerville for number. These are all related to last year. So in the report, management does provide, Terry and her team did provide a response to each of the findings with the planned corrective action and the date of the corrective action. So so we will circle back on these again next year, and hopefully these will be implemented. Any questions so far? Okay.
Commissioner Ingalls? Yes. Hey, hang on a moment. Commissioner Ingalls has a question.
When did you start working on all of this with the county?
More specific, when did we start the audit of the county? Or
Yeah, that'd be a good date to start with.
okay. For this year's audit, the audit began at the end of June of 2022, or it was in the month of June.
Maybe Ms. Willoughby can help. When did you bring in the outside auditors, approximately?
Eide Bailey has been under contract starting with the fiscal year 18-19 audit.
Yeah, that's right at the time you were cleaning up the mess. Thank you.
Other commissioners? No? Members of the... Please.
Terry Rankin for the record. If you wanted to look at the more detailed summary of what he just gave, if you look in the financial report, it's starting on page 259. It takes you through 1 through 6. and gives Ms. Willoughby's recommendations on when things will be completed. So I thought I'd tell you exactly where that is in the report.
That starts on page 259 of the financial statements, is where the findings are published. So the positive in this is that there was one new finding in the current year. So, and the remaining findings are findings from the prior year that the county is continuing to work through the implementation, and we would hope that they would all the findings would be implemented through fiscal year 23.
So the only thing I can say to that or add to that, Ms. Willoughby, is in previous years, not maybe last year, but nor this year, but previous years, I've seen when I've been involved in this process or watched this process from the audience perspective, there has been a much larger substantial amount of findings, and so we seem to be whittling them down, and so if we're back down to now 5 with one new one, that's an impressive achievement in my mind to get there.
Thank you, Terry Willoughby, for the record. And I do believe all of them, except for the first one, which the user roles and responsibilities will be corrected. They're, like, as David mentioned, they're almost there, but not quite, so they'll be going away next year. The first one is hard.
Any additional questions, commissioners? Okay. Is there more for that's it?
I can go through the rest.
Yep. Okay. Very good.
Real quick.
You're still on. Thank you. Continue, please.
Yeah, thank you. And then just looking ahead, new accounting pronouncements, like for this year, for 2022, we had the lease accounting standard that was effective. And as I indicated earlier, primarily affecting the airport with the number of leases that it has with the public. So that essentially resulted in the recording of lease receivables on the balance sheet, which previously were not required to be recorded, and now they are. So that certainly is good from a financial reporting perspective to see, what are those assets that the airport has that previously that revenue that would come in for those rental leases would be recorded just as revenue without really any focus on the balance sheet. So now we have more of a balance sheet focus. We're recording those lease receivables on the balance sheet, and certainly that can provide the user of the financial statements a little bit more information about the airport and its financial condition. The other GASBs that were effective this year did not have an effect on the financial statements for the county. Looking at next year, we are going to be implementing GASB number 96, which is the subscription-based information technology arrangement standard. So what this is going to require the county to do is take a look at any sort of contracts that it has with service providers that provide any sort of information technology through a license agreement, such as, we can look at Amazon, we can look at Microsoft, we can look at an accounting system where it's being hosted on the provider's server. Those types of situations where there is an agreement, there's a long-term agreement, there's a period of time where it's non-cancelable. So next year, we're going to look at those types of arrangements, and essentially we will treat them in a similar way that we do with leases, where there'll be a right to use asset that will be recorded on the balance sheet, and with an offset to a liability, essentially a lease liability that goes with it. So the GASB, in their grace, they separated these two standards. So we're dealing with the kind of the tangible assets under GASB 87, and in GASB 96, we're sort of dealing with the intangible assets. So we will be back at this again next year under GASB 96 and looking at what types of arrangements the county may have that fits into this category. Yeah, and then the rest of the accounting pronouncements looking ahead at this point, we're just at GASB 101. So it's hard to believe that we've already surpassed 100. But some of these standards are going to be effective in future years. But GASB 96 will be effective for next year's financial statement. So that'll be an item that we'll work with Terry and I'm sure Terry will discuss a little bit about this, but for the lease agreements for this year, for 2022, the county did implement a lease accounting software through a vendor called DebtBook. And so that's assisting the county with recording its leases, both operating leases and its revenue leases. And we were able to utilize that information for the audit, and does provide good information for the financial statement disclosures and recording those adjustments into the accounting system. So, so the county has the DebtBook system all set up, and that'll be helpful when we work through GASB 96. It should be an easier process to implement going into 2023. So after that, concludes the presentation. And again, I'd like to thank Terry and her team for all their hard work and effort with the audit this year. And also thankful we were able to get everything done and finalized before the end of the month and for the end of November. And we'll just open it up for any questions.
Commissioners? Commissioner Rice, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay. Any questions?
No, sir. Quite comprehensive, and as the last couple have been, and it sounds like we're in good hands.
Very good. Commissioner Tarkanian? Commissioner Nosat? Any additional questions, Commissioner Ingalls? I'm sure when you get home and you look at this, you'll have additional questions, but I know that our Chief Financial Officer will be able to answer those for you. So, Audit Committee member, Mr. McCoy, any questions or comments? No? No questions, Mr. Ms. Rankin? Wow, okay. I have no questions either. So, this is getting down to a fine art here. Yeah, so that's good. Okay, well, then, considering there's nothing else to do, this is for possible actions, so we have to go to public comment on this. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have additional comments, Ms. Willoughby?
I had a very brief presentation, so I can shorten that up and then we can be done. Again, as we've mentioned, this was the June 30th, 2022 ACFR. That's how we call it now. And the name change was effective, as we talked about last year, because the old name CAFR, the acronym CAFR, is a slur in South Africa. It's a racial slur. So because this is a national organization, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or the GASB, issued a statement and determined that it would from now on be the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or ACFR.
And we've determined already that that is not a racial slur anywhere in the world. Is that?
Oh, ACFR? No.
ACFR?
ACFR is not, CAFR is, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure we're politically correct everywhere.
I hope it doesn't change again. Because so under NRS 354-624, Again, an annual independent audit of each local government's financial statements is by a qualified, certified public accountant is required. It must be concluded and the report of the audit submitted to the governing body no later than 5 months after the close of the fiscal year, which would be today. So with that, and I want to comment on that, we are one of the earliest state, this is the earliest deadline of pretty much any state out there that I know of. And this, being able to meet this deadline would not be possible without my staff, and I have my finance manager, Denny Cartwright, is here, senior accountant, Carolyn Cheffo, and our new addition, Heather McDonnell, is our new accounting operations supervisor. She came back to finance from Public Works. And our whole team it was a real team effort, and I appreciate how smoothly the audit went this year. Again, we had an unmodified or clean opinion. We submit the ACFR to the Government Finance Officers Association for review. That's reviewed. The program encourages state and local governments to go beyond minimum requirements to ensure transparency and full disclosure and make sure that users of the financial statements have enough comprehensive information needed to assess the financial health of the local government. It's reviewed by GFOA professional staff, experts in public sector financial reporting, preparers, independent auditors, academics, and other financial professionals. And we did win the Certificate of Achievement in Financial Reporting for the prior year financial report. There's several sections of the ACFR, introductory financial statistical section, which is a 10-year historical data. And the single audit will be brought back to you probably in January. It's not due to the federal government until March 31st. The management's discussion and analysis is a summary of the financial results and provides a narrative. There are government-wide financial statements. You'll see those are the first financial statements you see. That is bringing together all the funds in the county together for one presentation. So some typical governmental funds are on a different source of accounting. They're modified accrual, which is more like cash. So for the government-wide statements, those are converted to full accrual. Statement of net assets is the same as a balance sheet in corporate America. Statement of activities is the same as an income statement that you would see in private corporation. Again, that's for the total government. And then you have basic financial statements, fund, proprietary, and then the notes to the financial statements. There are 3 types of note disclosures, and those provide description of accounting methods, additional detail or explanation of the amounts in the financial system statements, and then amounts that would otherwise meet the definition of financial statement information but doesn't meet all the criteria. Like you'll find a footnote on construction and other significant commitments. We don't detail that in the financial statements, but it is provided as a footnote. Typical note disclosures: cash deposits, investments, contingent liabilities, pension, capital assets and long-term liabilities, and interfund balances and transfers with the reason for those balances. And you can see by this that the county's net position increased from $264 million to $281 million in the current year. And again, this is just a breakdown of the different components. Total revenues for the county decreased about $18 million. A lot of that was one-time money. Remember all the CARES Act and all the one-time money we got last year. But also total expenses decreased. But again, our net position did increase. As far as the general fund, this is the schedule of budget to actual. The final budget had 53 million in revenues and 54 million in expenditures. We had a variance of 277,000 for revenue and $8 million of expenditures. Those are primarily projects that are ongoing or salary savings. As far as our reserves for the general fund, you can see it's increased since 2017. The green is the unassigned or available for use. Everything else is already committed at some point. Our fund balance coverage, fund balance policy that was passed by the board requires a minimum level of unassigned fund balance in the general fund equivalent to 2 months of ongoing operating expenditures, including transfers out. And as of June 30th, 22, we are almost at 5 months of coverage. Capital assets, there was just a minimal increase during the year. And most of this, the activity in capital assets was due to the ongoing Cave Rock project through the water utility. Long-term liabilities, I did want to highlight our pension liability has decreased in 2021. It was 68 million. It's now about 45 million. This is from data provided by Nevada PERS. And the reason for this is they're based on June 30th, 2021 fiscal year data from PERS, and they had a historic investment historic investment returns in fiscal year 21. And I included the information about that. You can see this is their chart. This is their typical numbers. 2021. So the two ways that pensions are funded are through employer contributions and investments. So this really bodes well for PERS, although I do believe they had an investment loss in 2022. So we'll see how that shakes out into employer contributions. But again, as we mentioned, we implemented GASB statement number 87 for leases, required recognition of certain lease assets and liabilities. Most of our expenditure leases were very small in net effect, but the airport did have significant revenue leases that are now recorded as long-term receivables and will be tracked. And establish a single model for lease accounting based on the principle that leases are financing and should be recorded as such, as either on the balance sheet. And these are just some reference materials that are good to read that I based some of this off of. Some economic indicators for fiscal year 22. And the unemployment rate as of June 22 for Douglas County was 4%. Nevada was 5.1%, so we're doing better than the state. However, the United States overall was 3.6% at June 22. For taxable sales, we had a 10.2 increase in fiscal year 22 over the prior year. So again, good news for the county. And that concludes my presentation.
Commissioner, questions? Commissioner Ingalls.
Ms. Willoughby, the event center, is that been capitalized? Is that a capital asset for the county?
Terry will be for the record. No, that's not. We don't own that, so it will not be on our books.
But we're paying for it.
No, we're not.
Who is?
The visitors to Lake Tahoe.
What about this $35 million debt obligation we've got to pay down for that?
Ms. Willoughby, I'll let you answer that one.
I think we're venturing a little bit off schedule here. Ms. Willoughby has answered. The event center is not an asset of the county, is not a liability of the county. Is that correct, Ms. Willoughby?
Terry will be correct. That is correct.
Even though we have funds that are committed, property taxes from the old RDA 2 over and above a certain amount are committed to that, but it's still not a county asset nor a liability.
Terry will be, that's correct. For it to be a county asset, we would have to have the title to the event center, and we do not.
Okay, if we can back up for a minute. Who does own it and who has capitalized it?
Terry will be, I don't have that information because it's not our asset.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Rice, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Tarkanian, you usually have some questions in this regard. Anything? No? Okay. Commissioner Noasad? No? Very, very comprehensive report. I really appreciate that. The only thing I would look at, on the very last page, you indicated Douglas County's unemployment rate at 4%, and yet I see nothing but help wanted signs all over our county. I don't know why we're not at 100% of employment, but that surprises me a little bit, as well as the state of Nevada. But anyways, that's just an observation.
Mr. Chairman?
I know we can't do anything about that. Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, my daughter Ava's looking for a job. Please let us know. She's applied to 6 places, can't get one yet. So if it is that tough, that many out there, let her know. Let me know.
I think I saw a sign at Burger King today when I came up.
Right.
Yes, we're getting off topic. You're right. So anyways, Mr. McCoy, any questions or comments that you wish to provide?
Hopefully my mic's on. Negative. Again, great job, Terry. And I'm from the old school where I've been to many other locations where they're not nearly as on top of the numbers as you are. So thank you very much.
Ms. Shorman?
Martha Scheuerman. Great job, Terry, and your team. Also, wanted to address that some of the finding that they have been repeated like 3 years in a row, and that was number 1 and 2. Is there a system issue or?
Terry will be, for the record, the number 2 was primarily completed during the fiscal year, but not quite. It will be resolved this fiscal year. We've taken, and Jenny Cartwright, my finance manager, has really taken that under her wing and made sure that we didn't have that finding again. As far as number 1, the board approved the selection of a new financial system, ERP, as part of the American Rescue Plan Act funding. And that's part of the scope of the work for that project. We're just entering into that now where we're doing the business process review. But I've let them know that we need to streamline that security and make sure that we all have a good understanding and policies going forward.
Thank you, Terry.
Ms. Rankin?
Thank you. Terry Rankin for the record. Great job. Commissioner Ingalls is right. There were no balanced bank statements. There was a mess, and the deficiencies were 46 at one point, so we're down major. I did want to bring to the attention of the commissioners, when you look at the revenue, the sales tax revenue, this is the year you transitioned from being subsidized by the state to standing on your own on revenue, on sales tax revenue. So given the way the economy has gone, that is a major undertaking, and it actually was very productive. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that this was a change year.
Excuse me. Actually, it's the current fiscal year. Yeah, so we'll start July 1st,
I guess that brought to mind a
But
question I had is.
You'll see a quarterly financial report coming shortly to the board that will talk about the sales tax.
Yeah, because that didn't affect fiscal year 21, 22, right?
Right,
And
that's
that's what
correct.
this report's all about.
That's correct.
Okay, because we just opted out of that as a receiving county. So we'll see some impact, greater impact in the 22, 23 report. So, any other questions? So I did want to, if there's no other questions, I guess, then once again, I want to commend you for bringing this to us. We're under the deadline. We haven't always been that way. The last couple of years we have, and that's commendable. So I thank you for that, and I'm glad that we're one of the counties that are being able to do that. So great job. So without further ado, then and I did want to take an opportunity also to welcome your finance team and welcome also Ms. McDonnell. Welcome to the finance team over from Public Works. So so at this time, this is a action item. Are we ready to go to action, Mr. Wadley? Okay, so we'll go to action. Since it's a possible action item, we do need to open this for public comment. So at this time, I'll open the floor for public comment. Is there any public comment here in chambers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, Jennifer Davidson, Assistant County Manager for the record. On behalf of the County Manager's Office, I too want to extend my congratulations to Terry and, Miss Willoughby and her team. They did an excellent job and worked tirelessly on behalf of this organization. We're very lucky to have them, and we thank them for their work.
Thank you. No retirements pending, right? Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Any other comment? Any other public comments here in chambers? Sensing none, Ms. Johnson, is there any public comment online?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marsha Johnson for the record. At this time, there's still no online attendees, so no public comment.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board then. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Ingles.
Okay. Having come from the corporate world and gone through internal, external audits to the point of ad nauseum, and I'd like to compliment Ms. Willoughby and the staff. A magnificent job. It's not an easy task, especially when you walk into what you guys walked into. So good work.
Mr. Chairman, one more.
Commissioner Nosat?
Ms. Willoughby, in order to put together a team, you have to have leadership skills, well, obviously which you do have. And getting the team to work as a team is leadership, and you have plenty of that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Tarkanian? Commissioner Rice?
If I can get off of mute, I think that Ms. Willoughby knows my feelings regarding her. I think that Douglas County being able to employ Terry has been a blessing and a boon. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. McCoy, any final comments?
Negative, I don't. One thing for Ms. Willoughby after this, which is so nitpicky, I won't even bring it up here.
Ms. Schumerman? No. Okay. Very good. Very good. Then I will entertain a motion to accept the Douglas County Fiscal Year 2021-22 Financial Audit and Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, ACFR. Motion?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Nosad, seconded by Commissioner Ingles to accept the Douglas County Fiscal Year 2021-22 Financial Audit and Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Sensing no further discussion, all those in favor by signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Not trying to overlook you folks, but unfortunately, you don't have a vote on this. So, okay, we appreciate your attendance, however, and it's been very welcome. And Ms. Willoughby did tell us why we were meeting today versus perhaps in December or February or January or whatever, but this is sort of a requirement. So that's why we're meeting on this last day of November. So with that, we've passed that, and we'll go to closing public comment. So at this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction control of the Board of Commissioners or those agenda items where public comment has not already been taken. Is there any further public comment here in chambers? Seeing none. Ms. Johnson, is there anybody online?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marsha Johnson for the record. There are no online attendees, so there's no public comment at this time.
Very good. So we'll bring it back and say that this meeting is adjourned. And I'll remind the public that we will have our standard December 1st Board of Commissioners meeting tomorrow here in this location at 10 a.m. So thank you for your attendance. Thank you for the report.
Good day all.